Hey folks, it's Fernando doing another video for more survivalists, and in this video I'm going to be addressing yet another very common myth in the survival prepper world, which is the survivalist team. The survivalist team, survivalist group, prepper group, tribe, I've seen it described as recently. Basically the idea of the survival team or survivalist group is a group of people that are all like-minded individuals. They're all survivalists, all preppers, depending on what each one wants to describe himself as, and they practice together, they train together, they get together for campings and practicing bug out scenarios, and these guys often think of themselves as the real deal. All right, in contrast with armchair survivalists or armchair preppers, these would be the guys that think they are the real deal because they're out there living what they preach, basically. Now, one of the first curious things is that they consider themselves to be the real deal because they have their survivalist group, but they haven't actually done any of what they're thinking of doing after the end of the world, because fortunately the scenario that they have kind of in mind has never actually gone down. There's been incidents where people have helped each other, but that's realistically more about networking and being there for friends and people that support each other. But the idea of the survivalist team is basically that once shit hits the fan, everyone is going to be getting together in the bug out location, in the retreat, and everyone living there together, providing security for one another, and basically like restarting society. I'm not a bad person. I don't believe myself to be one. I just find it funny to some extent. Basically the idea is that everyone, the group, the team, the tribe is going to be getting together in this place, and while the rest of the world falls apart, the team is going to be surviving, and fighting off impossible odds and being the ones that rebuild society. This is the kind of stuff that, guys, you often read in survival literature, in survival fiction and novels and such, which is all great, but the thing is that it's not really applicable to reality. When you look at real such events where the odds are impossible against you, you end up getting killed. There's basically three major flaws with the idea of the survival team, and this is not about networking, having people to count on. That this is specifically about the idea of a group of people, even with their families, all living together under the same roof, with one guy calling the shots, being the head honcho or leader or master or captain or whatever you want to call it, the king of the post-apocalyptic world. Basically, you're looking at three major flaws. It's the first one, and again, I'm not a jerk, even though sometimes it seems I cannot avoid it, but the first thing I ask whenever someone seriously asks me about this is, who's with you right now? I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything. It's just a simple, common question and logical one. As soon as someone starts, yeah, because I have 10, 20, 30 guys with me, they're gonna be doing this, we're gonna be doing that. It's all like in a potential future. But when you ask, okay, I get all that. Now, real dude, who is it with you like right now? I mean, you're what, in a house, in a condo, in an apartment? Yeah, I live in this house and that, but my team, but right this moment, who's with you right now? Well, I have my wife, I have a couple kids, my 2-year-old, my wife just had a baby, which we're pretty happy about it, and I go, okay, great, congratulations on the new baby and such. So you're basically, your group as of right now is you, your wife, your 2-year-old, and another newborn kid, right? That's basically who's in your house right now. That's basically who you count on right now. That's basically who you are responsible for right now. But more to the subject, that's your team right now. And immediately, people get a little bit defensive. No, but we already train, we do this, we do that, we've already planned. Right, those are all great things, but the thing is this: when shit really hits the fan, it's not gonna be announced. It's gonna be happening in the moment when you least expect it, and to some degree, depending on circumstances, depending on specifically what's happening, you may have the opportunity of calling for help, having someone drop by, help you out and such. But your team right now is who's living under your roof. If you're gonna be answering me, well, I'm living right now with 10 guys that were in the military with me. We were in Afghanistan together. We're all living right now under the same roof. That's my team. I'm gonna be going, okay, great. That's your team right now. That's fantastic. Great. That's the assets that you have in terms of people right now. Correct. If you tell me, yeah, I'm living with my 5 brothers, we all train together, we all took classes together, we all live under the same roof, or pretty much, one in front of the other. Right. That is understandable to expect. That's the people you're going to be counting on. But if you're talking about having people you have networked with that are neighbors or live some distance away from you, or that you met through classes or on the internet and such, and you're not actually all living together, that's kind of unlikely that you'll all bunch together exactly in the moment when you need it. There's a chance that maybe if you have the hindsight, if you have the warning, which you don't always have, some of those may end up dropping by, right? But the first problem with the idea of the survivalist team is it's not efficient as of, it's not taking place as of right now. It's not happening as of this moment. And that's a key aspect of survivalism, the way I at least see it. And I've addressed this philosophy many times in many other ways. The skills that you have, that's what you can count on. You just cannot count on the skills that you're planning on having and learning in the future. Yeah, because next year I'm going to be learning how to do this and that. Well, that's all fantastic, but as of right now, what is it that you have right now? All right, everyday carry gear, with which we talk about very often. I do videos on that often. Why is it that I think it's important? Because that's what's in your pockets right now. That's what you can realistically count on. It's not what's been left in your in your kit back home, and even in your vehicle. It's what you would immediately have with you when things catch you completely by surprise. All right, that's something that you just cannot overlook. You cannot just expect things to just fall into place just like you need them, specifically during an emergency, specifically during a disaster, which an essential part of its nature is that you don't have pretty much any warning, and if you have, it's usually going to be kind of limited. But specifically for the kind of things that people think they're going to be counting on a survival group, that's usually more related to security. That's more related to high levels of crime, of even anarchy, right? That's the kind of thing that people think of when they're thinking of training with other like-minded individuals and forming this survival team, right? Now, the thing is this, that situations of self-defense are 99% of those are completely by surprise. You have maybe no warning at all whatsoever, or just a few seconds, and if lucky, you're able to draw and use your concealed carry weapon, the weapon that you have with you right that moment. We're going back there to the EDC, the everyday carry system, and why that's important. That's basically what you can count on when things get really ugly in terms of violence, in terms of security. You won't be having enough time to call your buddies, all get together, all dress up like you do for the classes, and only then say to the carjacker, okay, now it's okay, come after me, or the home invader that will come after you at 3 a.m. in the morning, or the guy that it's ambushing you when you come back from the supermarket or you drive back home from work. That's the kind of thing that happens for real. You could have situations maybe where, let's suppose you have a superstorm, hurricanes, storms, natural disasters of different kind, or even man-made ones, but basically where you're left to fend for yourself. You cannot count on the authorities, and a neighborhood, a community has to pull together so as to provide security for themselves. All right, that would be a case in which, sure, if you have people nearby, if you have people that you can count on, you can organize, right, and do something about it. But again, in that specific kind of situation, there's a good chance that someone living in some other neighborhood, someone living in some other community or a far distance away, he's not going to be dropping by to help you out. He's going to be having his own issues to deal with in his own community. All right, so it's much more important to be realistic about these things and understand that maybe the people under your roof and the neighbors that you have are much more of a real survival team when things do really get ugly in the real world, and not in this fantasy scenario of, yeah, we're gonna be forming a survival team in a bug out cabin and fighting off zombies for the rest of our lives, right? Second big problem that I've noticed with anyone trying to organize a survival team group and such is that everyone has their own different wants, their own different needs, and basically it's impossible to have two families, let alone 10, 15 of them under the same roof for any period of time, basically. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but at least in my experience, families themselves are complicated enough as it is. I'm sure that many of you guys watching this are not in the best terms with your brothers, with your sisters, with your family, with your cousins. Even among blood, it's complicated. If you're going to be adding to that families that are not linked by blood, people that have their own families, and it's just friends or people that are networking and bringing their own baggage along with their families, right? That's a huge mess that will not last at all. That's something that I can basically guarantee you. If you try to pull together 5, 6 different families under a same roof in someone's property, all right, that person in his property will probably want to do what he believes is best, right? And he will believe he has the right to call the shots on certain things. Most definitely, he will be pretty interested in deciding what's going to be done in his own house, in his own land, in his own property. Understandably so. You have 5, 6 friends. You all train together. You all get along great. You all have the best relationship 5, 6 best buds, best friends could possibly have. What about your wives? What about your kids? How are they going to be getting along well? It's basically impossible to have people basically work and get along like ants or like bees in a hive, especially so with strong-willed people such as the ones that you find in the survival and preparedness community. In general, people that are interested in survival and preparedness are kind of very appreciative of personal liberties and freedom, and are usually quite hard-headed and like doing things their way. In general, that's the way it is. This is me talking from what I've noticed, I don't know, with pretty much most people that I've come across. I really haven't come across someone that it's extremely flexible and is looking to be very adaptive to what other people have in mind in general. And I'd say like 99% of the cases, people in the survival and preparedness community are very strong about being individuals rather than part of the of the group, right? And that's why you often see the mention of sheep, of people that are not self-reliant, people that are not survivalists or are not preppers, often being called sheep, right? As part of a group that are not individual thinkers, self-thinkers. Okay, so it's very difficult to pull that for any period of time. So whenever someone thinks that they're gonna be living 6, 10, 12 different families or 10, 12 different individuals let alone families, but even individuals alone. And they're all going to be getting along. No one's going to be having any different thoughts. No one's going to be thinking of, you know what, I think I'm going to be much better off if I move to my cousin's house somewhere else. And this is all completely understandable. I mean, one of the guys of your survival group, right? He has a cousin, a grandparent, a parent, a sister, a brother, or a friend in another location that's better off, that maybe can provide for a safer environment for his family. Maybe he found a good job somewhere else that's going to be providing the security and support, financial, in whatever it is that he's needing. He's going to be taking off. He's not going to be sacrificing, again, completely understandable as well, he's not going to be sacrificing his well-being, his own survival, just so as to die with the survival group, okay? It's very difficult to find people that really have nothing else other than that group of people, other than each other in their survival prepper group, all right? And finally, and maybe most important than anything else that I've talked about here until now, it simply does not work. And you cannot plan on doing something in the real world when it only works in fiction, when it only works in novels or in movies, all right? The idea of having the Walking Dead type of survivalist group, and that's supposedly going to be working out in an anarchic, completely violent, out of control, lawless environment, it makes no sense. It has never worked for anyone before, and it will not work for you either. Here we're not talking about maybe gathering together and, you know, watching each other's backs for a short period of time. In general, people think of this survival group as something of a long-term solution for the problem of widespread anarchy, the without rule of law thing that we've often heard about. Without rule of law, basically a situation where there's widespread anarchy, violence all around you, and you're going to be providing security for yourself and your family with this survival group. That simply does not work. It has never worked for anyone, and whenever, I mean, if you want to look at it in the real world, it's been called El Alamo, all right? And it didn't end up well. Not that long ago, there was this rancher in Mexico fighting it off with drug dealers. Basically, I think they tossed a few grenades and basically blew him off. There's no way in which a group of people can survive for any realistic period of time against impossible odds, all right? If it's real anarchy going on out there, if it's real without rule of law, which basically would be like a widespread civil unrest, like large-scale civil war, foreign invasion, something like that, where there's really no control of anything whatsoever. In that specific case, you're pretty much dead if you just stay in a spot, stay in a place, and think you're gonna be fighting off the rest of the world. You don't win fighting a war against the rest of the world, against the world around you. It didn't work for the African farmers that I've often mentioned, the South African farmers that found themselves in a position where the government was not on their side anymore. They're basically left to fend for themselves because of a number of reasons. Basically, they ended up fortifying the farms, hiring security, getting trained like crazy, all the guns you could possibly think of, and still that failed. Still, the only thousands of them ended up getting killed, and you know, they had small victories. Sometimes they were able to fend off attacks for a very short period of time, but at the end of the day, once, twice, thrice, eventually you just run out of luck. Eventually the other side realizes that there's no other solution but you losing that. I've seen this in Argentina as well. Whenever someone really wants you bad, they're gonna be getting you. I mean, any bad guy, so as to put it some way, with half an ounce of brain is gonna be putting together exactly how to take you down, and it's really not that hard. Slightly well-organized team of criminals, like you often see in Argentina. It's just a matter of gathering a little bit of intelligence, following your daily activities a little bit without, you won't even notice it, because they can just easily rotate, and one day one guy looks after you and checks you out, another day someone else does it. They just write down in a little notepad your schedule, your families, and you may be super Rambo badass dude, but maybe your wife isn't, maybe your kid isn't. Eventually you have to drop your guard, because you don't live in this fantasy world where everything goes exactly like planned. Whenever it is that you go, fill up your gas tank, your wife goes to the supermarket, or you drop the kids from school, whenever it is that you're not holding your rifle looking at the horizon waiting for someone to come after you, that's a moment when they get you, and there's really nothing you can do. They just grab someone, they grab you or your family, they grab your wife, they put a gun to her head, and that's that, and that's the end of it. All right. Yeah, sure, you go for the headshot, you draw and shoot, yeah, but what if it's 5-6 guys and they have a hostage? You're gonna be doing what? You're not gonna be doing shit. You're gonna be hoping for the best in that awful situation, and that's that. You're not going to be doing anything, because there's realistically nothing you can possibly do. Man, I mean, I've known of cases where people, even when during home invasions, they go inside the house with a hostage, and they just go for it. They just start shooting, and in general, man, your odds really suck. Your odds are really, really bad. And if they're in the slightest bit organized, you have no way of winning that. You have no way of winning against someone that has one of your family members as a hostage, and it's 4 or 5 of them. Maybe they have someone else outside watching over things. If they're slightly well organized and they have a hostage, that's that. There's really nothing you can do. I mean, even the cops are very limited on what they can actually do, and it's a whole huge mess to deal with the hostage situations. You on your own, it's pretty much done for. So just guys trying to bring a little bit of reality into what I often see people taking very seriously, and they think things are going to be working out exactly like they want, and just realize what you're doing. Just be real about it. And if you want to organize your neighbors, if you want to organize the people around you into a disaster emergency network of people that could watch each other's back or help each other, great. If you want to organize a neighborhood watch, great. If you want to organize a super survivalist tribe so as to fight off everyone else in the end of the world, yeah, well, guys, take care, have a great day. Remember to subscribe, and see you on our next video.